Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the Smart Park podcast, brought to you by Aquatic Development Group. I'm your host, Julie Klein, and I'm thrilled to kick off this series where we will explore what it really takes to build smart, successful, and guest-focused parks. This show is all about pulling back the curtain on the ideas, strategies, and real-world experiences shaping the future of aquatic recreation. And today we're diving into a topic that sits at the center of it all: capacity. Now, I know it might not be the flashiest of topics, but when it comes to water parks, getting capacity right can make or break your guest experience, your operations, and most importantly, your revenue. Joining me today is someone who's no stranger to the water park industry. Welcome on, Ray from ADG.
Thanks, Julie, and I'm excited to be guest numero uno.
Yes.
This is going to be fun.
Well, great. Let's start from the top. When we say capacity, obviously most people think of how many guests are in my water park, but what do you think capacity really means, and why does it matter?
Well, capacity is what the business is based on. So if someone has gone to the extent to develop a water park, which costs a few nickels, and they need to have enough room in it to get the right amount of people who will return the ROI. I mean, there's the simple business. I need a certain number of people through my gates, spending a certain amount of money, and the park has to be able to handle it. Now, there's obviously more to it than that, but that's the basics. So when you design a park, it's tied back to feasibility and what the return will be for the capital spent. And there's usually a target of, we think your park needs to hit X hundreds of thousands of people. So that means per day we have a certain number, and we need to be able to design a park that meets the budget and the number of people that you can get into it. It's pretty much like cut and dry in that way, but not really.
Yeah, because obviously there's flexibility of what you do around it, but you're right. And that's kind of why capacity is at the core, because we need that information to build a proper park around it. We've all been to a park that's uncomfortably overcrowded, where you're arm to arm in the wave pool or you're fighting for the cabana. So, when we talk about how we're designing parks for capacity, what are some of the key pieces that we're looking at?
Yeah, so it starts in the parking lot and the ability to get people parked. You're going to offer paid parking. Is there bus parking? Is there a drop-off that's big enough and a plaza for all these groups of people to sort of gather in as they come in? Is your front gate big enough to have the right infrastructure to manage your ticketing, whatever form that's taking these days? Because, that's kind of evolving quickly. So there's all this stuff going on in front. Get them through there. Then we need places for them to sit, places for them to play, and you also need capacity for them to eat and drink, right?
Right.
Lie in the sun or in the shade, as the case may be, use the restrooms. So you have all these micro capacities throughout that you have to get right to handle the big number, which is what makes them bank.
Right. I mean, it's the balancing of the active capacity, right? Where it's like, okay, we're all in the slide line, we're doing the attraction, but those passive capacities, I'm relaxed, I'm eating, I'm spending, and then the transient movement between them and making sure they're strategically laid out, right?
Yeah. So like when my kids were younger and wanted to go to a specific attraction and we were at a big park, did not let them go alone. So like, all right, you go. Okay, I'll go with her. Off we go. And I'm like, oh, well, could I buy something to eat? I love pretzels, so I'm always going to get the pretzel. And then I'll wait for her to go through line if she's doing it by herself. And that was my mini excursion, but there was capacity in that walking. So they held us without taking up a chair or space in a line as we walked along the pathway to go get to
the other slide or the ride, or right.
So that's why it's like design the park so that everything isn't all together, right? Oh, it's a really small site. Okay, great. Saved a few bucks, but now everyone's on top of each other. My lounge chair's 100 yards away, but I have to walk all the way back here to use the attractions. Now, spread them out, give them a journey with some topography. Gets really, I'd say, more to your advantage because it takes people a little longer, but it's a surprise around every corner. And you have to put things to eat, drink, and buy around those corners as well, because you can't feed everyone out of the same food building. That wouldn't be smart. So it's all part of the riddle of capacity and length of stay and guest experience.
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about some of the common pitfalls, right? I mean, we're already talking about the crowding piece of it. And, we talked about the food and beverage, but when we're looking at seating, one example that we think we did really well and that has worked is, looking at, instead of the large lounge chairs, how do you maximize the people in your park like we did at Soaky Mountain, right? Different chairs, but allowed for more chairs, so more people, more comfortable, and not taking up those big space, right?
Right. No, for sure. The furniture selection will drive the yield of the deck. And so if you look at options besides some of the traditional just full-size lounge chairs, you can get a lot more capacity. We could go into that. There's a lot more to it than just that, but we did help a furniture maker develop an option that was lounge enough, but gave us so much more capacity in those big deck areas, like around wave pools or front of play structures, kids pools. It made all the difference in the world, at least for a busy park,
What are some other common pitfalls that you've seen in parks that haven't planned appropriately for their capacity?
Well, you run into a lot of pitfalls. It's just, it gets uncomfortable, right? So if the walkways aren't wide enough, people feel crowded everywhere. The pools, the slide lines are too long. I mean, it's a good problem. You're popular, doing something right. You just got to figure out a way to change that up. Maybe not looking for, like you say, look at your furniture. Maybe you have areas that don't have any deck that could, right? You don't want to be a concrete jungle, although some parks are happy to be that. Pretty low maintenance, no landscaping. But if that's not your brand, then you have to look at it differently. And I think, are you on top of your staff? Are you expediting your queues? Are you running into issues with weight limits and dealing with gas at the top of the slide because they didn't check their weight at the bottom? You got to kind of go through that journey and see if you can tighten it up and streamline it so you avoid these little pitfalls that start to whittle away at time and experience.
Well, I think you brought up a good point too, even just planning for the right amount of staff, right? I mean, if you don't have a good grasp on what your capacity is, what you're trying to draw, you could be understaffed. And obviously with lifeguards and having the right amount of people in your food and beverage, it's important for that length to stay in good guest experience.
Yeah, I think all operators they budget their day. They think they know what historically they'll get on a Tuesday in June, and they plan for that amount of staff and plan accordingly. And then they have to react quickly if things aren't going their way, or if they're getting really busy, maybe, hey, can you come in today? I need some backup at the bar, or
right.
I need another fry cook. I know it's your day off, but I'll give you a day off down the road. So they do what they have to deal with it, but they're all based on a budget. They're budgeting every day and what their staffing is. So they go in with a predictable, here's what the money we think we'll make is today. So they're eyeing their goal towards the end of the season.
I was going to say too, when we look at a lot of the water parks out there right now, there's obviously many more that are aging or have been around a long time, don't have area to expand. If we're looking at how we can better utilize what we have in our park to manage capacity, what would be some recommendations you would make?
Well, I think it's one of the things that happened because of COVID, and I'm not sure it's still happening, so we'll find out. We talk to operators, is you can make the same or more money servicing less people. Like the idea that you have to fill in every sell, lower the price. People stopped discounting as much, kept the price higher. Less people came, but you know what? They made more money.
Right.
Because the person liked it there. It felt good. They were spending money. And so it worked. You can't do that down to, the ridiculous, but you can look at okay, if we made it a little nicer here and kept our prices up, painted things, landscaped, bought better furniture, cleaned everything up.
That's like a refresh, right?
Refresh.
Yeah.
That'll go somewhere. People will talk word of mouth. Oh my God, the bathrooms are clean this year, right? So if you're that park, there's your opportunity. The other one is just like furniture, look at yield. If you haven't bought new furniture, look at the options out there in the market that are smaller footprint that'll let more people sit around. And then if you're looking at a new attraction, but you can't or don't want to grow the footprint of your park, look at some of your older attractions. They don't entirely need to be torn out and rebuilt.
Yeah, it's renovations, right?
Like we've saved filter systems and pumps that weren't that old, or we converted the caisson of a wave pool into the balance tank for a play structure.
Jeez.
Okay.
Did everyone digest that?
Somebody will catch that, right? So
Yeah.
we didn't tear it out. We reused it because we were putting a play structure in the footprint of an old wave pool. Well, we need a balance tank. All right, there it is. It's called the caisson. This is what we'll do to it. We got it. That's
Well,
efficient.
it's efficient. And I also think that example is obviously it's King's Dominion. And I think it's a really good story of how you can look at all of your attractions, right? Not even just your food and beverage, your seating areas. Look at your attractions. What are working? What isn't? What are you guys asking for, right? Because in that example, 2 wave pools, 1 underutilized, and they wanted more kid space. So working with your designer to figure out how can we repurpose these areas into something new and marketable.
I mean, people don't realize what the cost of dirt and moving dirt can be. I mean, you don't always have a place to disperse the excavation on site, trucking it off to somewhere else. So there's a whole economy there that would blow your mind. So if you could avoid that by using the hole in the ground you already have, you're just thinking about additive
Versus removal,
That's
right?
more predictable.
Yeah.
At a lot of levels. So we'd like to look at parks like that and see where those opportunities are. And that was certainly one, King's Dominion. We did a little bit of that at that river for Zumbizi Bay. We were renovating that river and adding on to it. And so it just got to be creative and maybe invite someone in like us to walk your park and give you some of these ideas.
And I think actually the Zumbizi Bay one, I think is a great story of increasing your revenue, right? Because that was an adult river. And I remember, if I remember correctly, that walk-up bar was like one of the most profitable F&B buildings in their park. And they weren't anticipating that level of an increase.
Yeah, no, it worked out well for them. It did. So it was swim up and walk up, and it was an evolution from what they had before. So I think
Small tweaks.
yeah. little changes. It wasn't a huge project, but it had huge results.
Excellent. So when you're looking at any last words to be able to recommend, few small takeaways for existing parks, future developments, what are your last minute thoughts?
Like if you're a park owner, operator, get to other parks in season and see what other people are doing. But when you're in your own park, try to take the blinders off. Like, why are we doing that? Why are we using, how come there's nobody sitting over there? Look around. How come nobody sits here? Look around. Why? What about it? If you added shade, or you actually gave nice chairs over there, or maybe there's nothing to do over here. Like you put a mezzanine in an indoor water park, you got to put something up there to make it worthwhile going up. Like Cartwright, you walk up the steps, there's a bar, and cabanas.
We know we're right from ADG. It's
with pretzels, I'd definitely be there.
There.
And the one we just did, the first mezzanine we ever did was Great Escape in 2005. And there's a play structure up there. And so we grew the footprint of the building without growing the footprint of the building. But there was something to do.
Sure.
There's a journey. At the end of that journey up the hill, there's a big slide you can do. There's something to do worth being up there that adds capacity. So look at the corners of your park. And if they're the last resort and the last person you stuffed in the park is forced over there, maybe it is what it is, but look around. Like, how could you make it better?
Think differently.
Yeah.
Something different. I think you brought up a good point too, just before we go, and we can dive into this in another episode, but indoor water parks, talking about mezzanines and building on levels, right? How can you, if we're talking about capacity, what a great way to spread people out and maximize your deck space if you can use levels within a park.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the levels, we've done it a number of times and evolved it since Great Escape. The entrance at the new Okana Water Park, you come in on the second floor and you can go right down the stairs and almost jump into the play structure, or you can take a gently
winding ramp
past food, a bunch of places to sit that overlook the park, wrap around, and when you arrive, there's TVs, there's a bar, there's a hot tub, there's a water coaster, and it's really a fun one. Well, we did that one together.
That was fun.
It's serious drop in that water.
That was insane.
Point is, there's a ton to do, but they've also used the ramp to allow you to have seating and have capacity and get up and away from the kind of really fray of play down below if you want.
And I think even just the fun experience of you don't know what's going to be around the next corner, right? Fun little experiences. Well, we're out of time for today, but just to wrap things up, capacity is not just about how many people your park can hold. It's looking at how well you plan for flow, comfort, guest behavior, and when done right, it can make the difference between a stressful Saturday or a record-breaking one. Ray, thanks for being our first guest on the Smart Park podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me.